fair enough.
Hey everybody, Josh here, and I'm actually joined today by my good friend Adnan Riaz. And,
Hello.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about the Konami thing that's been going on today. And I actually have been gone all day. I haven't had a chance to read. I've only seen stuff on Twitter. And I know you're really mad about this. You're really... So I want to know, like, can you... And for anyone that hasn't been keeping up, and for me... Like, what exactly happened, or is happening?
Right, so, well, I was at work as well today. I came out to find this massive news outbreak. So, quick recap of everything. So, all the situation with Konami and Kojima, their rift that's been going on, and how it's jeopardized MGS5's development and everything else, that has rolled over to Silent Hills, which is the new horror game being developed by Del Toro and Kojima. So, first off, Konami listed that the PT playable teaser for Silent Hills would be removed at the end of this month. Then Del Toro came out on the stage panel and said, it's not going to happen, which kind of threw everything up in the air.
Isn't this like the third? This is like the third game that he's been attached to that's been canceled.
Yeah, it's the curse of Del Toro.
Yeah.
That's going to become a game.
I want that now.
It'd be great, directed by Del Toro. So yeah, he told that he said that happened. Then Norman Reedus came out and said, "Oh, sorry guys, it's not going to happen," which was even more of a shock because it's like, crap. And then Konami came out and started doing a bit more terrible damage control, where they're like, "Oh, we're doing this, and we've just removed it because of expiry rate and whatever, like on the PS Store." Mm-hmm. And then they just flat out came and said, "Oh, we've cancelled Silent Hills, but we're still going to look at doing Silent Hill projects, and maybe Del Toro and Kojima could come back on. We're in talks with them." So it's kind of like in the air and like all over the place.
But I thought, okay, so I know that people thought Kojima left, and then they're like, no, Kojima didn't leave. And then one of the voice actresses, right, was like, no, Kojima got fired, but then she redacted that. It's like so confusing.
So it's almost like an MGS plot.
Yeah.
So what Donna Burke came out and said that he's been fired. Then Konami's PR reps came out and said, no, she's lying. And then she kind of like timidly came out and said, maybe I was wrong and came out harsh. I think she was right, and now she's trying to do damage control on Konami's part.
She heard something and then...
Yeah, basically Kojima is a contractor at the minute for Konami, so he has like limited access to stuff, and he's literally just being, as a freelancer, he's working on the rest of the game. So he's not got like a hierarchy position now in Konami. He's taken his vice president role away, and he's basically just a contractor. He's just working on MGS5, so I can see him disappearing after this as soon as that game comes out. But the worst part is now Konami's not going to market that game, and they really need to market that game to get their money back.
Metal Gear?
Yeah.
They're not going to market it at all? Did they say this?
Well, it's kind of been like here and there and bits. Even Donna Burke came out and said like the money is like kind of tight now, and Kojima has like literally disappeared from the face of the planet. Like no one's even heard of him for like last few weeks except for like a random retweet in his Twitter account. But
because he's not tweeting his food. He's usually always like tweeting his food.
Tweeting his foods or his selfies or his films. But I think like they're going to keep it very quiet and just run along with things now and just hope that it goes well with sales. Because normally they would have been boosting the sales at this point. They'd be like, hey, pre-order it, whatever. Like, you know, get ready for MGS5. It's 5 months away. But it's gone quiet. Like, dead quiet. They won't be at E3. They won't be at Gamescom. They won't be at any big event.
Really? Yeah,
because there was, I think this month was the Games Media Award. And MGS won quite a few awards, and so did PT. And no one from Konami turned up. Neither did Kojima. And like none of Kojima Productions' is like ex-staff turned up. Like just no one turned up to collect these awards. So like honestly, I have this kind of feeling that the like Kojima must have walked into the Konami exec's office and just punched him. Like it's gone to that level where
he did something, or maybe he was like. I have this feeling that he has to be so fucking tired of doing Metal Gear.
Yeah, I think it's Konami that were pushing him about it.
Yeah, and because it's the only thing that's really successful for them. And now with all this stuff, and we should also mention that they also removed themselves from the New York Stock Exchange this morning.
They that quote was really funny how they were going about it. Like, we voluntarily removed ourselves from the New York Stock Exchange.
You know what that... I mean, didn't Nintendo do that recently, though?
Yes.
Yeah, but they did it, but I think the only reason they did it was to... Because everybody's like, oh, shoot, is Nintendo going out of business? And then you figure out they bought, like, 50% of DNA.
Yeah.
And then they privately sold DNA, like, 1.5% of their stock or some shit like that. So that doesn't mean the end of the world. But it definitely doesn't look good. I mean, Nintendo didn't cancel a game and then fire Miyamoto and then remove themselves from the stock portfolio. You know what I mean?
Exactly, yeah.
It's not this like clusterfuck of things.
You know what? Nintendo do a lot of shit, and we've ranted about it quite a bit, but Nintendo have decent PR, and they know how to damage control stuff. Konami have been all over the fucking place. It's like, when you need something to really kind of calm down the situation, just something goes tits up for Konami, and they're just like, oh, fuck, what are we supposed to do? And they kind of throw more gasoline on the fire.
Yeah.
And this is like an example of it. Last thing you want to do is when you've just cancelled the game is to take yourself off the New York Stock Exchange.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of even more precarious for the situation.
I think it was you when we were in our chat room, and you were saying something like Konami makes a lot of just like, they make medical equipment and like pachinko machines and stuff, right?
Oh yeah, they make all kinds of shit.
Yeah,
all kinds of shit.
Like, so they might. You were saying they might just leave gaming altogether, which I don't know if I don't know if that might happen. They might just switch to like mobile or something.
Yeah.
But if they do that, I really think they need to sell off their IPs to people who are really going to care for them.
I have a feeling that because they kind of want to get legalized gambling in Japan. It's not legalized at the minute, and gambling's a big sector for them because, as I said, they have like slot machines and all kinds of stuff. Like health and fitness slot machines have loads of stuff in like Japan that they kind of like pushing forward, and it's more profitable than gaming. I think that they're going to pretty much liquidize like a lot of the other gaming assets, and they're going to keep PES and Metal Gear as the main things, and they're going to use those as kind of mechanisms to like increase their investments in gaming. Because this is the kind of thing with Kojima, is that Metal Gear, the sequels, are very, very expensive to develop. Like, you just see the kind of production values in it, the actors that are involved in it. Like, it's an expensive project to follow up with like the sequels, and the more the sequels keep coming out, the less kind of like the sales increase, because it depends on the people. Like, you have to kind of have that history of the franchise, and obviously the core kind of fan base will buy the game. But when they can kind of like get rid of Kojima and shove him off, they can just start making games like Rising, Metal Gear Rising.
I hated that game.
Yeah, I hate that game as well. They can make games along that line, which is more of aims a little bit more to the casual audience, where they can just, even if they don't care about the story, they can just pick up and be a hack and slash game.
Yeah. Or they'll make some Metal Gear Solid like first person shooter or something.
Just like Snake's Revenge.
Yeah. So make something ridiculous. Part of me wishes that they would just sell off lots of things. Even if they don't sell Metal Gear, I want them to sell Castlevania to somebody that'll actually give that series love, because I love Castlevania, and I love... some of them are not good, obviously. Every series has the games that aren't good in them, but some of the Castlevania games, like Symphony of the Night, are some of the best games ever.
Yeah.
They're easily in like top 100 tier. I'm a huge fan of like Super Castlevania 4, which is just, it's really just a remake of the first one, but I think it's the best one just because of the way it looks and its controls and stuff. But and they've just done nothing but hammer that series into the ground. Like Lords of Shadow, the little I played was fun, but it wasn't a Castlevania game. It just had like spooky creatures in it and shit, and I said, "Oh, we'll call it Castlevania," and people will care. It's like, not really. I just want them to make a good side scroller Metroidvania Castlevania game. It's weird to say, but I just want them to make, just make a new one. Make a new one that's like super pretty. And obviously Konami's not going to do that. Konami is just another company in the long list of Japanese game companies that just keeps fucking up lately. Like
they ran Silent Hill, Castlevania into the ground. They even ran Silent Hill into the ground as well.
Yeah.
But they kind of like, I don't think they're going to get rid of that franchise at all. They'll just keep it because it's a valuable asset. Same with Activision and Crash Bandicoot, which is kind of that huge shame for people like us who really want to kind of see another game in the hands of a new developer.
Uh-huh.
And they'll do the same thing with Metal Gear. Metal Gear will be run even more into the ground with Konami at the helm of it, because they will just kind of be like, you know what, let's sink the ship quickly and get all the money off as soon as we can. And that's what they're going to do. And I think, like, to be honest, I'm happy that Kojima goes, because I said this to a few people yesterday, PT, if it didn't have that ending to that thing where it's the big reveal where it's Silent Hills, that felt like a completely unique IP horror.
Right.
Like, you don't have to necessarily relate it to Silent Hill. So that kind of thing with that, another developer could easily take up Kojima and Del Toro's idea and just like manipulate it into something else.
I have kind of a theory now, just kind of thinking about all this, about maybe why, because Kojima was working on Silent Hills, right? He was like a producer or whatever.
He was co-director with
Del Toro. How long have they been working on Metal Gear Solid 5? I want to say
7 years.
Huh?
7 years now.
Yeah, that's a lot of money. And and they had to do Fox Engine, which looks incredible, but they had to. Huh?
Oh, I was going to say the actual engine is Konami's as well, because it's under their property.
Yeah, so I mean, they spent all that time and money developing a graphical game engine that rivals like top tier, Unreal Engine and Crysis, CryEngine. Sorry, CryEngine, and then they're like, oh, we're only going to use it on this one game, and then on top of that, they have to spend all the money making Metal Gear 5. And then the way more money marketing it. They probably were like, I'm sure the executives at Konami were probably like, thank Christ this is almost over, because it's just eating all our money.
Mm-hmm.
And then
they use Fox Engine for PES.
Oh, they do?
Yeah, they use it for PES and obviously PT.
Oh, interesting. Okay. But I have a feeling it was probably made for Metal Gear in mind.
Metal Gear.
Yeah. And I have this feeling that maybe they got way too ahead of themselves with Silent Hills, and then Kojima, excuse me, probably said like, this is the grand vision of it, and they probably all they saw was like, this is how much it's gonna cost, and they're like, we can't fucking do that. Like, you just spent. We just spent like millions upon millions of dollars, probably close to GTA 5 levels.
Yeah,
I would assume it's probably around $500 million just to make that game, and it's never gonna see that return. Like, it's not.
No chance.
There's no chance in hell it's gonna see that return. So they probably had a big fight over budget, because I have a feeling Kojima is one of the guys like, it's gonna cost what it's gonna cost. Who gives a fuck?
Yeah.
Whereas Konami's like, we're kind of going into the toilet and we need to save money, so I'd rather you didn't act like that.
Yeah.
And then
he's like, if you couldn't compare him, you'd be like a Kubrick or a Spielberg or somewhere like that level, who'd be like, the vision is set, don't change it. And I'm not going to kind of like back down from it. I think the other thing that with Konami, what they kind of feared most is that Kojima became bigger than Konami.
He really did.
And yeah, that's what I mean. Like, he was that one figure that really kind of exploded. Like, obviously Miyamoto has kind of withdrawn a little bit to the shadows in the recent years.
Well, yeah, he's not really designing anymore. He's more of like the producer.
But he's still got a big exec position at Nintendo, and obviously people who think of Miyamoto think of Nintendo, but more like people who think about Kojima think about Metal Gear. Like, just
they never think about Konami, really.
Exactly.
They're like, oh, this is a Kojima game. It's never a Konami game, because Konami's like never really they're not really relevant here.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly. They're not relevant at all. And like Kojima's kind of like games and the profits that he wants from it and everything else, they're kind of things that Sony would give you. Like if Uncharted and the Naughty Dog team, they have very much like free creative control over their games, and obviously Sony just pumps in the money to them.
Right.
I think that's what kind of like Kojima has more in kind of like what he's looking for, like just kind of Sony turning up and be like, how's the game going? He's like, I've done this, and they'd be like, okay, see you later. Because that's what Sony are a little bit like. They just turn up at studios and just like, how's the progress going? And they kind of let these studios have full control over their games.
Right.
Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. And I just don't think they like that idea that Kojima was doing that. He had Kojima Productions, his own studio. He had Kojima Station, his own podcast. He had Kojima Productions LA, which was his own brand in Los Angeles. I just think Konami were like, oh, shit, right. MGS 5 is done. He's going to leave. And the last thing we need to do is still be affiliated with Hideo Kojima. Yeah. And him being bigger than the company. So they're just like, we'll tank him down. But yeah, it's a really tricky situation what they've done. I think the worst thing that Konami have actually done is that they've pissed off millions of people who are not going to invest in future products after MGS5.
Yeah, but I just have this feeling that they just, you know, they're not gonna care much about games much anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
I wouldn't be surprised.
They're doing what Sega would have done. Well, when Sega was developing their console, and they should have just moved into gaming, they've kind of like just leapt over that kind of hurdle of where they know that the gamings aren't doing that. Well, the gaming titles they have aren't doing that brilliant, so we'll just jump a hurdle, kill off as many crap that we don't need, just do the 1 or 2, 3 things, and then, you know, roll with it.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? This is super nerdy of me, but I'm on Google Finance looking at Konami's stock price over the last 10 years, and it's not even the all-time low. Like, it's low, but their all-time low was in 2009, and it was $12.97 a share, and right now it's sitting at $18.86, which doesn't really matter anymore because as of today, their stock can't be traded publicly anymore. But it dropped in the last 24 hours by 50 cents, which is pretty significant. But yeah, it's weird, and it's also interesting that in like '08 it was really high, and then it dips down again, and then in 2011 it goes way back up again, and then it's just this kind of gradual decline, sort of over the years. So
it's kind of like looking at the years as well, like the games that come out. As we said, like MGS5 has been in development for 7 years, and in between that space you've got Peace Walker and Ground Zeroes. And like different years have like missing places for Konami where they're not making a profit. Like PES is their kind of annual thing where they're trying to compete with FIFA and they're getting obliterated every year. Yeah, like there's nothing else coming out for Konami, so their financial revenues just kind of plummet each year, and the stock price is going to keep falling because they're not doing what Activision's doing, where they're putting games out. Like Activision's bringing back Guitar Hero and Tony Hawk again. Like two of those assets that you thought were dead, they kind of got those back, and they're going to keep increasing their revenue. And they have obviously Call of Duty to fall back on. But with Konami, they're like, shit, we only have PES every year, and then the occasional Metal Gear game that comes out every so often.
Yeah,
and obviously,
and then some other dumb, shitty Castlevania rehash every so often that's like really bad or something.
Or
you
the
know?
dance game or something along those lines.
They had a dance. What dance game did they have?
It was Dance Revolution.
They did DDR? I didn't know. Maybe I knew that in the back of my head. I don't know. Well, yeah, but DDR hasn't been relevant in like 10 years. So,
They did do DDR. DDR's that game.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't realize that. Yeah, I mean, DDR hasn't been relevant in a long time. So, that's not...
Konami hasn't been relevant in a long time.
Right, they haven't really been relevant since then. They just kind of have... You know, they push out Metal Gear games, but I'm really interested to see where this goes. I'm really interested to see if they sell things off.
One of the funniest things I had a conversation with is after all this stuff that came out, I turned around to a friend and said, "I bet you 20 quid that Ground Zeroes was Konami's decision to split from the Phantom Pain." And he was like, I was talking to a friend, he was like, "Why you say that?" And I was like, "If you remember that E3 2013 trailer, isn't it funny how Ground Zeroes' footage is spliced in with the Phantom Pains?" And they were both of the games were heavily marketed to like to be this together package. But then all of a sudden it kind of like split. I think Konami were like, you know what, we need to put something out. And then even then Kojima was sort of like, no, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I even think he came out in an interview, he was like, I didn't really want to do that and put it as two separate games. And I think it was just literally Konami being like, we need to make this two separate games. And they're like, the rift has started.
Yeah, that or Ground Zeroes was meant to be like a demo. You know, as like a marketing thing for... Cause,
like PT.
Yeah, I think it would have been... but not
more,
like surprisingly.
More advanced.
Yeah, I think Ground Zeroes was more in his mind probably something like, 2 months before 5 comes out, we're going to release Ground Zeroes, and it's going to be free. Yeah. And it's just like, this, you have to play this because it's the beginning of the plot, but it's also like a good marketing thing, and you'll get a feel for how the game works and stuff. Like. But then I have a feeling Konami was like, is this done? Oh, we're going to sell it for like $20 then. Or 30 or however much it was. It was 20 on the store, right?
Yeah, it was around about $20.
Yeah, and I beat it in 45 minutes, and then I was like, well, that's over now.
Yeah, I think that was Konami at what they were doing, because it was bizarre that even under Kojima's name something like that had happened, because his other games weren't like that. It just kind of smelled a bit weird when you saw it happen. It's just, I honestly think Konami, like, I feel sorry for Kojima as well, because he's been at that company for 29 years and he's built Konami into the name it is now. Like, without Kojima, there would probably be nothing right now. Like, MGS, the IP pushed them to, like, new levels.
Yeah.
Like, people knew who Konami was because of him. And even, like, all the positions he's put, like, he's been executive vice president and he's been, like, high-level status in the company. They just kind of, like, kick him to the dirt. It's so bad. It's like treachery with a smile on its face. It's by definition that.
This is a very THQ situation.
Mm-hmm.
I just have this feeling they're gonna auction things off. And you know what I think is interesting is I'm trying to think of places where Kojima, if he is interested in continuing game development, which he probably is.
Yeah.
Like, where would he go?
He can head anywhere he wants.
He can literally go anywhere. But here's the thing. He can go anywhere, but how many people can actually afford to keep him there? Because like we said earlier, his projects always have these grand visions.
That's very true.
And
yeah.
he's usually going to be pushing like a $250 million budget, you know?
Yeah.
Who can afford that? And there's only a handful of developers who can really like afford that. And one of the ones that comes to mind, and this is odd, it sounds odd, but when I say it out loud, it might make some sense. I have this weird feeling that maybe like Rockstar might try to pick him up. And
Jesus
I know that
Christ,
sounds...
everyone's mind.
I know that sounds strange, like why Rockstar? Well, mainly because Rockstar only puts out a game every 5 years, right?
And they treble their profits, like quadruple their
yeah,
profits.
GTA 5 cost $500 million to make, but it made $1 billion in 24 hours or something like that. It was some fucking ridiculous amount. So like they're laid back. They have, just fistfuls of money, and you know that if Kojima got to make like the kind of American crime drama that he maybe always wanted to, Rockstar could afford it. I mean, there's a couple other people like to keep in mind, but I think if anybody was gonna afford it, either he would do that or he would try to go out on his own. But I feel like if he went out on his own, he wouldn't be satisfied because he wouldn't have the money. No handful of investors is gonna get behind like that large amount of project without
without a good return in it.
Yeah, Rockstar just makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think, like, with him, he's obviously, as you said, like, a huge investment to put into it. I mean, Nintendo's an option. He has good connections with Miyamoto.
Yeah, he's really good friends with Miyamoto.
And they have a big war chest, Nintendo, and also the fact that how they quality control their titles. And, like, in the spacing they put between games, they make tons of money. I mean, the Amiibo wave has made them a shit ton of money.
Yeah, I have 2 Amiibos. Don't even have a Wii.
I mean, to be honest, I flat out said that was a stupid fucking thing, and I regret every decision because it's so clever for them to make such a great profit from Amiibos.
Yeah, the functionality is not even that cool, but that's like a
Exactly. It's just
thing.
you want it in your room because it looks cool.
Yeah, I just have a Donkey Kong and a Diddy Kong on my shelf. So I'm like, I love both these characters. So yeah.
Yeah, as you said, Rockstar's an option. Nintendo's an option. Microsoft, I don't think that could happen.
I don't think no, because the Xbox. I mean, Microsoft has a lot of money. Obviously, they're fucking loaded, but like Xbox still isn't as profitable as it was when it first launched. Like it's I think the profits for Xbox go down like every year, something like that.
Well, that's due to lack of IPs and
they say that this E3 they're really focusing on. They have a brand new IP to show and they have a lot of exclusives to show, which is great. I really doubt that they would go after Kojima. No. I mean, Sony might because Metal Gear has been such a staple franchise in the PlayStation history.
Kojima has a good relationship with Shuei Yoshida as well. I just think Sony would look at him as a viable option because it's just he's got such a big name to him. And can you imagine just like breaking the news tomorrow that Sony signed Kojima up to a first-party studio?
Yeah.
And then they have they have Neil Druckmann, they have David Cage, have all these big profile figures in the industry running first-party games. It's sort of that kind of thing where people are going to switch their eyes to Sony and be like, right. And the thing is though, when he does move to a new studio and what he does next is not going to be Metal Gear related. So the fact that even he has a grand vision for this project, it's going to appeal more to the masses because it's going to be a fresh project, a fresh slate.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, a full kind of spectrum. Like, he could literally, like you said, the crime drama of, like, Rockstar, he could do that kind of game and it'd appeal to more people because it's outside of Metal Gear's kind of, like, big timeline. Like, it's a new IP, and surprisingly, it could work. I mean, he could go to Sony. I think that's, in my opinion, that's where I have like a big site. It's either that or Nintendo, even if that just sounds bizarre, the latter one.
But my only thing is, you mentioned the Nintendo War Chest. People bring that up all the time, but the fact is, like, that money could go away quick.
Oh, very true.
And I mean, Nintendo's making pretty good money on amiibos. They're making, pretty damn good money on amiibos, like hand over fist. The problem is that they're not really making a lot of money on Wii U, if any. They're not making anything. Like they've sold barely like 10 million, I think.
Yeah.
If that.
It's not very good.
Which isn't, and that's 2 or 3 years on the market. 2 years, right? I think 2 years. Because it came out before PS4 and the X1.
Yeah. I mean, I think the NX is going to be like a different story in like 2 years' time because that could literally just change their kind of position if they do it right.
Yeah, I have some complaints about that because now it's like, why should I even buy a Wii U?
Yeah,
you've already told me there's something else right around the corner, so they're not helping themselves. But
I mean, like the NX project's quite clever as well because if like kind of, as I said, like some of the first-party IPs that they have are going to go to like certain studios for development, but outside of Nintendo's kind of jurisdiction, like when they're so kind of tight on quality control since the late 80s, they're going to kind of give a bit more freedom to these other studios. They're kind of a company that's, I don't know, they're kind of a little bit hesitant to move forward a little bit, and that's the weird part. Because if they did move forward, but if they did move forward, they could literally be such a powerful enemy to Sony and even Microsoft, but they're in a story for itself. But
I feel like the Wii U would be doing so good if they could just get Minecraft on it. But they just do not. I don't think they've ever. I think Mohang or like Notch when he was still there said like they've never approached him about it. Do you know
what the worst part is? That the Nintendo execs kind of complained about the Wii U's weakness instead of using its best strength, and it's the touchpad. So like, stop bitching about it and use it to its strength. Like, Minecraft, as you said, get indie developers on there. Fucking hell, they would have a right time messing about.
I mean, there are a lot of indie devs on it, but I don't know how much they're actually using the gamepad.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it's kind of like that thing with Sony where they're like, here you go, and they kind of like open the door for indie people, and then people are like, oh yeah, I'm gonna make indie games for Vita and like for PS4, and like that's kind of evolution of Sony where they became so popular because it's just like, you know what, we have first-party studios, we have third-party studios, you guys can make games as well. And it's kind of just like benefiting them as well in the long run.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they get a cut of all those games. So.
Exactly. That's what I mean. They're kind of like being open to the idea, and then Microsoft and like Nintendo being all over the place. But back to Kojima anyway. I would be more interested to see when Phantom Pain comes out and then see where he goes. I think he'll go a little bit quiet for the first 2 months or so, and then I think he's going to announce where he's going.
Yeah.
Wherever it is.
I don't know that he would go... I think Nintendo seems odd to me. I know it makes sense because he knows people there, but it seems odd to me because I don't see Nintendo, like, going for these gritty, kind of more Kojima-esque games, you know?
But I mean, the thing is, though, we don't know what he's actually fully capable of, because, like, I mean, like, his games, like, the MGS has always shown, like, a fusion of different film genres, horror and stuff like that, and that's why they kind of, like, the scene where Grey Fox butchers all those genome soldiers on the wall, that's straight like a Japanese horror movie, and he kind of, like, puts that into PT a little bit. But I mean, like, PT came out of nowhere, and it kind of showed, like, this difference from Metal Gear. He can kind of dip into these other genres. And I mean, obviously, earlier projects are all kind of like mechs and stuff. Like, moving away from the mechs, he could literally bring something that's like kind of like a little bit mind blowing to like the masses.
Yeah, I don't know. I see him going to Sony more, but also Sony doesn't really have the best financial state at the moment.
No, their financial situation is quite dire.
Unless they just bring him into Japan studio, you know.
Yeah, I think. Well, they're kind of like restructuring a little bit. Sony have kind of working out where their problems are finally, because they're kind of discontinuing certain brands and they're focusing heavily on PlayStation, which makes a lot of sense because you know, it's sold 20 million units, work with it. But I think Sony Japan would be very helpful for them to put them there, because if they really want to increase their presence there and kind of like retain any kind of influence in Japan, Kojima is one way to do it. Obviously, like, a lot of the things, like, with Japanese culture, it's kind of, I think people were kind of shocked with the Konami and Kojima situation, because it's kind of very disrespectful for what they did, and they're very hostile to people who are rude, in that kind of sense. So that could have come and really bite Konami in the arse, and, I mean, might make Kojima a bit more popular. But, the thing is that I can't really tell, like, the entire story, because it's so all over the place. Like, there's no, like, without Kojima saying anything, we don't know what's happened.
Yeah,
I think, like, in a year's time, he'll come out and bash Konami.
Somebody on NeoGAF's got like a corkboard with string just everywhere, like just trying to figure this out. It's almost, it's like the whole Amy Hennig thing on crack. Like, it's like we don't know what happened with Amy Hennig, but we assume it was political in nature, you know. And it's the same thing here, but there's like so many other things happening that it, you know. And they're not saying anything, which means all we can do is speculate, and then we're getting all these weird theories out of it. But
yeah, I mean, there's a problem though as well, because when everything's silent, as you said, it's even more of a problem. But when Konami says something, it becomes like even more true, because as I said, their PR team is absolutely fucking terrible. You send them an email, they just give you a message where it's like, yeah, that's true, like, and you're just kind of doing terrible damage control.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, I think that's it. I don't have anything else to say.
No, I don't have anything else to say.
Alrighty. Well, are you worried about Konami's future? Let us know in the comments. And of course, check the description for Adnan's Twitter feed. He writes all kinds of articles, does podcasts, all sorts of other things, so you should go check his stuff out. And we'll see you guys later. Bye.